All right, page 2 of the sample test. The table gives you the total metric tons in millions of metric tons for these 5 countries. And it says complete the table. That would be the relative frequency. To do that, you need to know the total of all of these. So we get 11.9 plus 9 plus 6.4 plus 2.8 plus, excuse me, still working on my cold here, 32.4, and so we would have to take, I'm going to store that in X just to make it easy for me. I'm going to take 11.9 divided by that number, and I get 36.7%. 9 divided by my answer, and that's 27.8%. 6.4 divided by X is 19.8%. 2.8 divided by X is 8.6%. And 2.3 divided by X is 7.1%. Now this should add to be close to 100. It might be a little bit off, like 1 or 2 tenths, simply because I was rounding. But that's the relative frequency. Make a relative frequency graph. So this would appropriately be maybe a bar graph with US, China, Brazil, just doing them in order, China, Argentina, and India. And I want to do up to 36%, so 10, 20, 30, 40%. And this is of the percentage of total for the 5 countries, and this is the countries, and so I need to make a bar above US and above Brazil and above China and above Argentina, above India, that are equally spaced. This one's up to 36, so there's 20% there. 36 is about there for the US. And China should be to 27, which is about there, or Brazil. And China is 19.8, which is about there. It should be about the same widths, different heights. And Argentina is 8.6, which is down under 10. And India is slightly less than that, but not much, 7. And so that would be an acceptable bar graph. I've labeled, I put units that are evenly spaced. There's no units on here, but I got the bars evenly spaced. And then how many degrees in a pie chart for Brazil? Well, it's 27.8 of the whole circle. And the whole circle is 360 degrees. So we want to find 27.8% of that, which we do by multiplying by 0.278, and we get, if we do that, 0.277 times 360, and we get 100.08. 100 degrees is close enough, approximately 100 degrees. All right, next one. This graph shows the number of women and men getting baccalaureate degrees. Which gender is predicted to receive the most in 2020? Well, the men, if I lay a straight edge on here, the men looks like it lines up with this. If this is parallel with these other lines, look like men lined up with about 800. and the women go from 800 to 1850 maybe. So 1850 minus 800 is, so the women is about the difference here, which is 1050. So which has the most? The women. How many more? 800 to 1050 is about 250 more. And approximately which decade did one pass the other? So it looks like the men are hanging around about this height, slowly increasing, and the women's gap, so let's just kind of check it here. I'll mark it here at 1980. That's about the height of the men. And if I go up here, the women are just about the same. After that, the men are about keep the same, but the women increase. So it's during the 1980s that the women pass the men. Okay, and then 8 guidelines can explain why it's important to give an example. And then consider the source. So this is just one of the 8. So you should familiarize yourself with all of the 8 and maybe have an example for each of the 8. But what does it mean to consider the source? Well, if you were doing a study on tobacco, you wouldn't want a major tobacco company doing the study or somebody that's affiliated with it. If it was on pollution from oil companies, you wouldn't want to use an oil company study. If you were concerned about an environmental issue, you wouldn't want to use just the environmental, like Greenpeace or something like that, to just do the only study on this. You would want to make sure it's a source that's independent, has no personal buy-in to whatever's being done. So source has no vested interest in results. That's why you got to consider the sources on all the polls. Conservative poll takers will probably skew it towards Trump. Liberal poll takers would probably skew results towards Clinton. So you've got to consider the source. If you were looking at presidential polls, is it a poll that isn't pro-liberal or conservative, Democratic or Republican or whatever, to make sure that you're getting a just picture. Okay, so that's number 6.